The Middle Ages are usually portrayed as a romantic era of knights, castles, and magnificent cathedrals. However, this story strips away all illusions and grandeur. Here, there are no heroes or epic feats. There is only you, a medieval winemaker whose life unfolds amidst dirt, pain, and an endless struggle to survive. Every day tests your strength and patience. Every effort merely postpones the inevitable. This tale ironically and grimly plunges into realistic everyday life, unveiling the harsh fate of an ordinary man whose hands create wine, yet whose heart has long forgotten the taste of joy. But before you settle in comfortably, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is there right now. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us. And now, make yourselves comfortable. We're about to begin. You wake up because your back has decided you've slept enough. Not that it matters whether you agree. Your bed, if it still deserves the name, is a half-rotten pile of straw stuffed into a wooden frame that groans louder than you do when it's cold, which is always. The smell of mold, damp wool, and whatever died under your floorboards last month is thick in the air. There's something sharp stuck in your thigh. You pull it out. A chicken bone, probably. Maybe yours, maybe someone else's. The roof above your head is a living timeline of medieval decay. Blackened beams, a few straw bundles, and a hole through which you can see the sky, or the rain, or the frost. This morning, it's gray light and the sound of pigs arguing over breakfast. You sit up slowly. You don't stretch. The last time you stretched, something in your spine popped, and you walked like a broken sack for a week. Your family is already up, mostly. Your wife mutters at the fire pit, poking half-burnt twigs and whispering at the ashes like they owe her money. The children, 3 surviving, 2 buried, fight over a crust of bread with the kind of desperation that only the perpetually hungry possess. You ignore them. You learned long ago not to look too hard at starving children, especially when they're yours. You throw on your tunic, which smells like sweat, cow manure, and the very specific dampness that wool develops after 4 months of unwashed wear. Your boots are stiff, not with dryness. You've forgotten what dryness is. No, they are stiff because they have absorbed everything a foot can produce and more. But they are boots, and you are alive, and that is already more than your neighbor could say last week. You eat whatever's left. Black bread, hard as timber. Beans, if you're lucky. If you're luckier, they won't give you gas. If you're luckiest, they won't contain a weevil the size of your thumbnail. You bite anyway. Hunger outpaces fear. There is no toilet. There is a pit behind the barn, and sometimes you make it there. Other times, it's a ditch, a hedge, or, when truly desperate, your own compost pile. Sanitation is a dream for rich men and monasteries. You don't dream anymore. You wash your face in a bucket of yesterday's water. It is brown, not muddy, just brown with the memory of many hands and the occasional rat. There is ice on top. You smash through it with your knuckles and slap your cheeks like you're trying to punish them for existing. Congratulations, you're clean by medieval standards, which is to say, not actively on fire. Outside, the world begins to creak into motion. Chickens peck at your boots. The goat eyes you like it remembers last winter when its mate disappeared. The pigs are louder than usual. You throw them scraps, mostly bones and stale porridge. They squeal with glee. You wonder what it's like to be that happy about garbage. The sun is low and the mud is high. It hasn't stopped raining for 17 days, but you've stopped counting. Mud is your constant companion between your toes, up your shins, on your clothes, and under your nails. It's almost part of you now. You suspect you will be buried in it. Perhaps the pigs will find you first. Your neighbor passes by, dragging a wooden cart with a broken wheel. He nods. You nod. No one speaks. Words are expensive. Everyone saves their breath for swearing at animals or praying to saints who won't answer. Today, like yesterday, like every day, you go to the vineyard. You are not a merchant. You are not a lord. You are not even a craftsman with a warm forge. You are a winemaker, which means you are a peasant with delusions of taste. But do not be mistaken. There is no poetry in your vines, no art in your fermentation. This is not the tale of a romantic vintner. This is the tale of a tired man growing fermented rot in a dying patch of land while his knees slowly turn into gravel. The vineyard is 3 fields away. That is 3 fields of muck, rocks, and angry dogs. You pass the blacksmith's hut. His face is burned, and he only has 6 fingers left, but at least he works near fire. You envy him. You pass the chapel. The priest is drunk already, which means the wine barrel you sold him last week was accepted. That is good. Maybe he will forget you owe penance. Maybe God will. Finally, you reach your vines. They are not romantic. They are angry green parasites winding around crooked wooden supports, like they're trying to escape the soil that birthed them. They are leafless now, skeletal and pathetic in the winter fog, and yet you still owe them your back, your blood, and your best years. You check them every morning, even in off season. Why? Because if you do not, the rats will, or the frost, or the mildew, or the neighbor's sheep. Everything conspires to destroy what little hope your vines offer. You have no tools. You have sticks and a dull knife. The shears broke last spring, and no one sells new ones unless you trade grain. You have no grain. You have wine. But no one wants wine now. Not yet. Not until spring, when people start pretending to celebrate things again. Your fingers already ache from cold. There are cracks in your skin. You rub them with pig fat to keep the infection out. Sometimes it works. Sometimes the infection wins. You saw a man lose a thumb last year to vine rot. You're not even sure that's a real disease, but the thumb turned black, and then he died. So you call it what you must. Your wife once said she wanted to move to the city. You laughed so hard you pulled a rib. The city is worse. In the city, they have rats the size of chickens and smells that make your field stink like a perfumery. In the city, no one knows your name, which sounds lovely, until you are sick or robbed or dead, and no one notices for a week. At least here, the pigs will eat your body. You tie a bit of twine around a broken post. The wind snaps it off again. You sigh, spit in the dirt, and do it again, because that is what it means to live like this. You spit, you tie, and you do it again. The vines will die anyway, so will you. But not today, maybe tomorrow. You step into the vineyard, and the vines stare back at you. They're waiting, impatient as always, twisted and tangled into shapes that mock any notion of human control. The vines know you hate them. Perhaps, you think, they hate you back. Today is pruning day. You dread pruning day almost as much as you dread planting day, or harvest day, or any day that involves interaction with these miserable plants. You pull your knife from your belt. Calling it a knife is charitable. It's more a shard of dull iron attached to a splintered wooden handle held together by strips of hide. It hasn't seen a whetstone in years because whetstones cost money, and money is something you last saw when you sold your last good cow 2 winters past. You grip the knife harder, feeling the leather bite into your cracked palms. Winter air finds every open wound, every patch of bare skin, and stings it just to remind you that discomfort is the baseline. You pick a vine at random, hoping it suffers more than you as you hack into it. The vine resists. Of course, it resists. Nothing in your life has ever yielded easily. Each cut is an argument, each vine a negotiation. You slice again, and again your arms soon burn as if the vineyard itself has drained your strength. Bits of green and brown splinter away, and the sap oozes thick and slow, like blood from a wounded beast. You briefly pity the vine before remembering your own pain is much worse. By midday, your fingers are stiff, and the knife slips repeatedly, causing fresh cuts along your knuckles. These new injuries layer neatly upon old scars, creating a personal record of agricultural failure etched directly into your skin. You bleed quietly onto the vines. It occurs to you, with grim amusement, that your blood is likely the best fertilizer these ungrateful sticks have ever tasted. The wind picks up, whipping dust and dirt into your eyes. You rub them, but your fingers are filthy, and now your eyes burn. Blinded temporarily, you stumble forward, tripping over an unseen root. Your ankle twists sharply, pain shooting upward. You swear loudly, causing the crows perched nearby to scatter into the gray sky, their caws sounding like laughter. Even the birds mock you as you sit in the dirt, nursing your ankle and glaring at the vines. Memories surface unwillingly. You recall your father pruning these very vines, his face twisted with bitterness as he warned you never to take up his work. Do anything else, he'd said, spitting venomously on the soil, as though the vineyard itself were listening. But there was nothing else. You are here, still trapped, performing the same futile rituals, bound by the same cycle of hope, despair, and eventual rot. Your stomach growls. Hunger is always present, a constant companion more loyal than your dog ever was. There is bread somewhere in your satchel, a lump as hard as a stone, saved from last night's dinner. You chew it without tasting, feeling the grit of sand and fragments of grain millstones. It hurts your teeth, but you ignore the pain because this is life. A series of discomforts, briefly interrupted by moments of greater discomfort. You look upward. Dark clouds threaten rain, or worse, hail. Hail would strip your vines bare, ruin your harvest, and ensure another winter spent living off scraps and desperation. You whisper a prayer, not out of faith, but habit. God has never seemed overly interested in your vines, though you suspect he takes pleasure in your suffering. After all, why else would he place you here? The rain begins, gentle at first, then harder, soaking you instantly. The ground beneath your feet becomes treacherous, mud sucking greedily at your boots, eager to pull you down permanently. The water mixes with blood from your hands, trickling pinkish streams down your wrists. You continue pruning, soaked and shivering, because stopping is not an option. Stopping is death. A sharp pain tears through your hand. You stare dumbly at the knife embedded deep into your thumb. You hadn't even noticed your fingers growing numb until the slip happened. Blood flows freely now, too much this time. You pull out the blade and press your dirty sleeve against the wound, creating a makeshift bandage. The bleeding slows, and you resume working with your other hand, half crippled but determined. What else can you do? Your neighbor appears on the horizon, dragging his own weary bones through the mud. He sees your hand, nods grimly, and shows you his own, bound tightly in dirty cloth. Solidarity among suffering men is limited to silent acknowledgement. Words are an unnecessary luxury. You nod back, continuing your painful, mindless pruning. As afternoon bleeds into evening, insects awaken. They swarm around your face, crawling over your skin, biting your neck, your ears, the corners of your eyes. You swat at them uselessly, your movements sluggish and imprecise. A large beetle lands squarely on your cheek. You barely react, resigned to its presence. At least someone is benefiting from your existence today. A distant crackle of thunder signals worse weather. You turn toward home, exhausted, your back bent under the weight of failure and fatigue. The vineyard looks just as overgrown as before you started, as though your entire day was a meaningless ritual of violence against stubborn plants. Perhaps it was. Returning home takes twice as long with your injured ankle. Each step is agony, yet you persist because you must. Mud and rain blur your vision, and the wet earth beneath your feet seems eager to reclaim you entirely. You stumble several times, each fall driving home the futility of your daily struggle. You finally reach your hut, shivering uncontrollably. Inside, smoke fills the room from the damp wood your wife struggles to burn. Your children huddle silently, too tired even to complain. You collapse onto the bench, dripping mud and blood onto the dirt floor. No one speaks. Words are unnecessary. Everyone knows the price of today, paid again in blood, pain, and exhaustion. You close your eyes briefly, too weary even to eat the watery stew warming over weak flames. Tomorrow will be more pruning, more suffering, more struggle. Tomorrow will break you again. But tonight, for just a moment, you let yourself rest, ignoring the relentless whispers of vines waiting to defeat you once more. Maybe someday the vines will yield kindly to your knife. Maybe someday the sun will shine gently, the ground stay firm beneath your boots, and insects keep their distance. Maybe someday your children will thank you for your sacrifices, and your wife will smile genuinely again. But you doubt it. Such dreams are foolish, reserved for those who haven't spent their lives fighting the earth itself. You drift toward uneasy sleep, knowing full well the nightmare resumes at sunrise. Harvest has finally come. If you were a more optimistic person, this might feel like victory. But optimism is for those who haven't spent their lives ankle deep in mud, elbow deep in fermenting grape juice. For you, harvest means a new form of misery, hours spent hunched over vines, sticky hands, back pain that outlives the season itself, and the constant buzzing threat of insects, as determined as you to extract every last drop from the fruit. You rise early, not that you ever truly sleep. The ache in your bones wakes you before dawn, reminding you that your body has surrendered to the tyranny of the vines. You shuffle into the vineyard, the pale gray sky overhead indifferent to your discomfort. The grape clusters hang heavy, thick-skinned and glistening with morning dew, mocking you with their weight and promise of exhaustion. You take your wicker basket, which has more holes than wicker left, and begin picking. Within minutes, your fingers are coated in sugary juice and dirt, creating a paste that no amount of wiping removes. Ants crawl quickly up your wrists, eager to defend their claimed fruit. You shake them off angrily, cursing under your breath, but they simply return in greater numbers, determined to outlast your temper. Your knife, still dull and rusted, makes a rough, awkward cut, occasionally slicing your fingers rather than the stems. Blood mingles freely with grape juice, but you have long since stopped noticing. Pain has become background noise, a constant hum reminding you that existence is suffering made flesh. Your children join you in the picking. Their presence is neither heartwarming nor helpful. Rather, it's a reminder of the slow grind of generations doomed to repeat this process forever. They are clumsy, careless, crushing grapes beneath their feet and spilling baskets already only half full. You snap at them occasionally, but even anger feels like wasted energy today. By noon, sweat drips down your face and back, mixing with grape juice into a sticky syrup covering your skin. Your clothes cling miserably, stiffened by drying fruit sugars. The wasps have arrived, attracted by sweetness, circling aggressively around your face and hands. Occasionally, one stings, just to remind you that nature is always one step ahead in cruelty. Your wife brings bread and water, a sparse lunch. The bread is stale, the water cloudy, tasting of rust and algae. Yet hunger silences complaints. You chew slowly, mechanically, eyes blankly watching the vines, knowing they still mock you even as you rest. With picking done, at least for today, you begin crushing. Rich men use presses. You have your feet and a worn wooden vat that leaks at every joint. You step barefoot into the grapes, feeling their cold, slippery resistance between your toes. The pulp squishes grotesquely, seeds biting sharply into your soles. The juice stings every fresh cut, making you grimace, but you continue stomping because that is your destiny to crush and be crushed. The grapes yield slowly, begrudgingly. Each stomp sends spurts of sticky purple juice onto your calves and knees, coating you in a dark stain that will linger for weeks. Bits of stem and skin stick stubbornly to your legs, itching furiously. You long ago abandoned attempts at cleanliness. Cleanliness is a luxury reserved for the wealthy, monks, or fools, none of which describes you. The smell rises quickly, sweet at first, then sickly, turning sour as the sun warms the pulp. Flies gather enthusiastically, forming black, buzzing clouds over your vat. You swat occasionally, but mostly surrender. Why fight inevitability? They land freely, adding their own vile contributions. You know they will return tomorrow and the day after. They are consistent, perhaps more reliable than the grapes themselves. Finally, the juice, now called must, is transferred into aging barrels. You inherited these barrels from your grandfather. He inherited them from his grandfather. They leak, creak, and often explode if not carefully watched. Inside lives a universe of molds, yeasts, insects, and fungi. You cannot clean them thoroughly, and perhaps it's better you don't. Whatever dark alchemy brews within may be the only thing giving your wine character. It certainly isn't your skill or care. You pour carefully, painfully aware that every spilled drop represents lost bread, lost clothes, lost coins. You whisper prayers under your breath, asking saints whose names you barely remember to protect your wine. They never have before, but desperation breeds ritual. If the wine turns to vinegar, you'll drink vinegar. If it turns rancid, you'll drink rancid wine. If rats get inside, you'll share with rats. You lost your pride long ago. Dignity is just another casualty of rural life. Fermentation begins quickly. At night, you hear barrels groan and bubble beneath your home, sounding like restless spirits trapped below the earth. Occasionally, a barrel explodes violently, showering walls, floors, and ceiling with pungent red spray. Cleaning it is pointless. You simply live with the stains, another visual reminder of your ceaseless struggles. Days pass slowly, and the must grows violent. Yeasts, invisible and wild, turn sweetness into alcohol, bubbling angrily, as if protesting their fate. You spend days watching the surface carefully, skimming scum that looks disturbingly like diseased flesh. Sometimes you wonder if your wine could truly poison someone, but in truth, you care little. Death from wine would almost be merciful compared to death from the plague, starvation, or endless toil. Weeks later, your cellar reeks of mold, decay, and alcohol. You descend daily, holding a sputtering candle, breathing shallowly to avoid choking on the pungent vapors. Mold grows thickly on walls, barrels, and even your clothing. You brush it aside without thought, accepting its silent companionship as inevitable. Perhaps someday it will consume you entirely. When you taste the wine, it's harsh, acrid, and bitter. Perhaps it will mellow, perhaps not. You've never mastered that mystery. You suspect wine itself chooses its path. Some barrels destined for bishops, others for peasants, some simply destined for rats. Yours always seems destined for suffering. You finish each night exhausted, fingers raw, feet stained, and clothes stiff with dried juice. Sleep brings no relief, only dreams of endless crushing, barrels bursting, and vines wrapping themselves around your throat. You awaken in a cold sweat, convinced briefly you've suffocated beneath piles of fermenting grapes. In quiet moments, you think bitterly of those who romanticize winemaking, the monks who write songs praising vines, poets describing grape harvests as gifts from God. They are fools who never lived ankle deep in fermenting pulp, never felt mold grow on their skin, never had insects feast freely on their bloodied hands. But this is your life, a winemaker who despises wine, crushed as relentlessly as his grapes. You suspect, grimly, your bitterness is the secret ingredient in every sour barrel. You climb the stairs from the cellar slowly, knees creaking, feet heavy. Night air stings your nostrils, refreshingly clean compared to the cellar below. Tomorrow you'll return, descend back into that humid, fungal hell, because no one else will. You glance briefly upward, searching stars dimly visible through cloud cover. Maybe somewhere someone is sipping wine, blissfully unaware of the blood, mold, and misery hidden in every glass. But down here, where grapes become poison, there's only you. Stained hands, bitter soul, and divine mold growing quietly in darkness. The wine is finally ready, or as ready as it ever will be. Your barrels stand lined up, leaking stubbornly onto the cellar floor, sticky pools collecting flies and forming crusted stains that defy any hope of cleaning. You stare at the wooden casks bitterly, knowing that their contents represent months of your life, distilled into a liquid most will find inadequate. Still, you must sell it, for without coin you starve, and starvation, though familiar, never grows easier. At dawn, you roll the barrels from your cellar, each rotation sending pain up your aching spine. You've bound your wounded thumb and twisted ankle tightly, but pain has long ceased to deter you. Pain is simply life's background hum, constant, steady, almost comforting in its familiarity. You hoist a barrel onto your old wooden cart, a crude contraption missing two spokes on one wheel and creaking ominously with every movement. You set off for the market, a journey of several days over roads more pothole than path. Each rut jars your spine, rattling your teeth and spilling precious droplets from your barrels. You curse silently as the wine leaks steadily, dripping coin after coin onto the dusty ground beneath. On the road, you are not alone. Other peasants trudge beside you, carts similarly ramshackle, barrels similarly leaking. Occasionally, you exchange wary glances, assessing one another's misfortune without sympathy. Compassion is a luxury few can afford. You know their wine is probably as poor as yours, sour, thin, and faintly toxic, but still, you envy them, assuming their barrels leak less, their wheels turn smoother, their buyers more easily fooled. Upon reaching town, you find the marketplace crowded and loud. Buyers circle impatiently, tasting samples, spitting theatrically into buckets or onto the dirt. This habit never fails to irritate you, precious liquid wasted, as if your efforts mean nothing. Yet you say nothing. Confrontation drives buyers away faster than sour grapes. A merchant approaches, dressed finely in silk and velvet. You instantly dislike him. Clean hands, smooth skin, the sort who never pruned a vine or crushed grapes beneath bleeding feet. He demands a sample, eyes narrowed suspiciously. You tap your barrel reluctantly, pouring carefully. He tastes, grimaces theatrically, and spits. Thin, sour, he declares disdainfully. Have you added water again? Of course you have. Everyone does. Water stretches supply, masks faults, dilutes the bitterness of mold and rat droppings. Yet you feign indignation, denying vigorously. He shrugs, uninterested. Negotiations ensue, tedious, humiliating rituals of pleading and arguing. He finally offers barely enough coins to pay taxes, let alone feed your family. You accept, swallowing pride along with bile. He gestures dismissively for servants to take the barrels. You watch bitterly, calculating how many loaves of bread you've lost, how many rags your children will wear because of this stingy bargain. But the merchant cares little. His wealth depends on your poverty. Next, you seek the bishop's representative. The church demands tribute in wine, paid not in coin, but in fear and obligation. The bishop, famously greedy and particular, insists on tasting the finest samples before accepting. You dread this yearly ritual, knowing your wine is nowhere near fine. The bishop's servant, a dour monk named Brother Anselm, greets you with cold suspicion. He sips, eyes narrowing in judgment. You hold your breath, silently praying the wine has mellowed enough to deceive. It tastes of mold, he finally announces, voice dripping disdain. You nod helplessly, murmuring apologies, promising better next year. Anselm sighs theatrically, as if your failures personally wound him. Eventually, he accepts a single barrel, demanding you deliver it to the bishop's manor yourself. He offers neither thanks nor payment, only threats of divine wrath should the wine disappoint. You load the barrel onto your back, setting off immediately. The bishop's manor lies beyond town, atop a steep hill overlooking your misery. Each step uphill feels heavier than the last, your spine creaking, knees buckling, breath ragged from years of dust inhaled in vineyards. Finally, you reach the gates, panting, soaked in sweat, legs shaking violently beneath the barrel's weight. The bishop's servants relieve you wordlessly, examining the barrel suspiciously. You stand awkwardly, unsure whether to wait or flee. Eventually, a door opens, and the bishop himself emerges, resplendent in silk robes, pale skin flushed from daily indulgences. He tastes the wine carefully, lips curling disdainfully. Barely adequate, he mutters dismissively, eyes skimming over you as though you're invisible. You bow low, desperate for approval or at least escape. He waves you away impatiently, as if your poverty offends him personally. You retreat gratefully, bowing repeatedly, backing away until safely beyond sight. Returning to town empty handed feels worse than the humiliation of delivery. Traders now sense your desperation, offering even less for your remaining wine. You bargain pitifully, pride completely abandoned, selling barrels for coins that won't last a month. The buyers mock you openly, certain you've watered down your product or worse. Yet they buy, because peasants have no choice, their poverty making them easy targets. At sunset, exhausted and bitter, you begin the journey home, cart empty except for a handful of coins, a pitiful reward for months of blood, mold, and suffering. Night falls quickly, road darkening dangerously. You hear rustling behind you, figures moving silently. Bandits, drawn by desperation or cruelty, surround your cart. You raise an empty hands, pleading poverty. They strike anyway, robbing even the few coins earned. You lie face down in wet mud, feeling their boots on your back, tasting dirt and blood and defeat. They leave you alive, not from mercy, but indifference. You stagger homeward, empty handed, soul crushed further than grapes ever could be. By dawn, you reach your hut, bruised and bleeding. Your family greets you silently, recognizing defeat instantly. They ask no questions. Failure is obvious in your bloodied clothes, empty cart, and hollow eyes. Days later, word reaches you. The bishop disliked your wine, accusing you of fraud. You receive no punishment yet, but know your fate now hangs precariously. The church forgives slowly, forgets never. Next year must be better, or worse consequences await. You sit alone that evening, watching sunset redden fields you despise. You wonder bitterly if there's truly any difference between real and fake wine, between honest failure and fraud. After all, everything about your life feels counterfeit. Hope, dignity, prosperity, all illusions carefully maintained, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Your youngest child approaches quietly, offering bread, stale, crumbling, pitifully small. You smile weakly, accepting silently. She retreats, leaving you alone, chewing bitterly, pondering the thin line between survival and despair. Tomorrow you'll return to vines mocking you openly, begin again, pouring blood, sweat, and tears into grapes destined for insult and rejection. You'll trade pride for coins, honesty for survival, life for existence. The bishop will drink better wine, merchants will earn richer profits. But you, the winemaker, remain forever trapped, bitterly aware every barrel holds more shame than wine. As darkness claims your hut, you close weary eyes, knowing tomorrow offers no redemption, only repetition of today's humiliation. The cycle continues endlessly: harvest, struggle, trade, humiliation. And somewhere high above, the bishop sips from golden goblets, oblivious to the mold, blood, and deceit hidden within every drop. Winter settles over your land, heavy and cruel. The fields lie stripped bare, and the vines, those cursed, bitter companions of yours, stand skeletal and mocking beneath blankets of ice. Your vineyard resembles a graveyard, rows of brittle sticks marking graves of your yearly hopes. There's a bitter comfort in knowing the vines suffer as you do, trapped beneath frost that kills slowly, relentlessly. Your hut offers no relief. Wind whistles freely through gaps in walls, carrying snowflakes inside, dusting your floor and forming tiny drifts around your bed. You've stopped trying to repair the roof. Patching holes only delays inevitable collapse. At night, lying awake beneath thin blankets, you watch the snow float gently through the roof, imagining each flake a tiny messenger from heaven, whispering reminders of your insignificance. Food grows scarcer daily. Grain bins are nearly empty, and what bread remains is black, hard, and moldy. You scrape green fuzz from crusts each morning, forcing yourself to swallow bitterness along with nourishment. Your children stare hollow eyed, silent accusations of your failures, their thin bodies a record of inadequacy. Your wife says nothing, but you sense her quiet resentment, a coldness deeper than winter itself. You drink your own wine, not out of enjoyment, but desperation. The barrels left unsold are sour, thin, acidic, an insult to taste and an injury to your stomach. Yet you drink deeply, hoping bitterness numbs your despair. The wine burns your throat, irritates your stomach, yet brings momentary oblivion, a small mercy you cherish. Your joints ache continuously now. Years spent pruning vines, crushing grapes, carrying heavy barrels have taken their toll. Your fingers, swollen and crooked, refuse to straighten. Knees crackle painfully each time you rise, and your back remains permanently bent, as if bowing in apology for a life poorly lived. Each movement reminds you that your body has become as broken as your spirit. You reflect bitterly on years wasted among vines, countless hours spent tending stubborn plants that offered no gratitude, no reward beyond minimal survival. Had you been a soldier, perhaps you would have died quickly and gloriously in battle, remembered by someone. A merchant, perhaps wealth could have shielded you from endless misery. Instead, you chose, or rather inherited, a life bound to vines, mold, rats, and perpetual exhaustion. One afternoon, you venture to the cellar, seeking more wine to dull your misery. Descending the stairs, you hear them creak dangerously beneath your weight, aged, brittle wood protesting as you enter the cold dampness below. Candles flicker weakly, illuminating barrels standing solemnly against walls covered in thick, fuzzy mold. A particular barrel draws your gaze, one you filled last summer, hoping for better wine than usual. You open it carefully, anticipation faintly stirring within your chest. Dipping fingers into dark liquid, You taste cautiously. It's sour, yet familiar, comforting even. It tastes exactly like your life, bitter, acidic, slightly rancid, but undeniably yours. You sit beside this barrel quietly, sipping slowly, reminiscing bitterly on past harvests, failed crops, ruined wines, and disappointed buyers. Each sip evokes another painful memory, a tapestry of endless struggle woven from vines, mold, insects, and despair. You remember your father pruning vines decades before, his face twisted with regret, warning you never to follow his path. But you had no choice, no options beyond vineyards, sour wine, aching joints, and hopelessness. Now your sons resist following you, dreaming instead of escape, of better lives elsewhere. You wish them success, though bitterness whispers they'll likely inherit your misery anyway. Hours pass unnoticed in your cellar, surrounded by cold, moldy stone and dripping barrels. You drink deeply, surrendering fully to wine's numbing embrace. Your vision blurs pleasantly, thoughts dulling, pain fading momentarily. The mold covered walls become oddly comforting, familiar companions who've watched your struggles silently for years. Eventually, the candle gutters out, plunging you into darkness. You don't bother relighting it. Darkness suits your mood, matching perfectly your internal landscape. You lean back against damp stone, eyes closing slowly. Perhaps, you think, you'll simply remain here, becoming one more patch of mold, quietly forgotten among barrels of sour wine. Days later, fever finds you. Dampness, cold, and hopelessness combine, creating sickness that sinks quickly into your bones. Your breathing grows labored, joints burning hot beneath icy skin. You lie motionless in your bed, staring upward at snowflakes drifting gently through holes in your roof. They land softly on your face, melting instantly, tracing cold paths down your cheeks. You lack strength even to brush them away. Your family hovers quietly, accepting your fate with silent resignation. Death isn't shocking, just another inevitable season of life. You sense their sadness mingled with relief. Your passing frees them slightly, lessening burden on scarce resources. You don't blame them. You'd feel similarly if roles reversed. Your mind drifts, memories mixing freely. Vines, barrels, mold, insects, pain, hunger, all swirling chaotically, forming a portrait of relentless struggle. You imagine the vineyard without you, vines twisting unchecked, mold spreading eagerly, barrels leaking openly, rats celebrating your absence. The image fills you with quiet bitterness. The vineyard will outlast you, uncaring as always. Finally, exhaustion claims you fully. Your eyes close gently, breath shallow and slow. You feel yourself drifting peacefully downward, sinking deeply into earth you've spent life battling. Darkness welcomes you warmly, embracing gently, promising final rest. Spring arrives eventually. Your children reluctantly prune vines, continuing bitter tradition. They curse vines just as you did, fingers bleeding, backs aching, aware now fully of burdens inherited. They discover your old barrels, wine sour, thick with mold, undrinkable. They spill contents bitterly onto ground, watching liquid vanish into thirsty soil. The vines drink deeply, uncaring of your absence. They sprout eagerly, twisting upward, claiming sunlight greedily. New grapes form, promising sour harvest yet again. Your sons watch quietly, sensing futility, yet resigned to inevitability. Generations pass, your name forgotten entirely. But vineyard remains, vines still bitter, mold still thriving, barrels still leaking. Peasants still prune painfully, crush grapes miserably, sell sour wine shamefully. Cycle continues endlessly, unbroken by human struggles or dreams. Yet somewhere deep beneath vines, mold, and earth lies your memory, bitter, silent witness to vineyard's endless cruelty. If soil remembers anything, it remembers tears, sweat, blood spilled freely upon it. Perhaps vineyard thrives solely upon human misery, growing stronger from every struggle it observes. So vines twist upward eternally, mold spreads eagerly, barrels leak stubbornly. Vineyard waits patiently, confident in endless supply of weary souls trapped willingly within it. People like you, destined always to be crushed as completely as grapes beneath their feet. Your story ends quietly, unnoticed by history or memory, merging silently into soil you've battled forever. Yet Vineyard remains indifferent, patiently awaiting next peasant foolish enough to dream that sour grapes might someday sweeten. They never do.